I want you to picture the smartest AI you can think of right now. You know, GPT 5.2, maybe the new Gemini, Claude Opus 4.5.
All the big ones.
Yeah, the heavy hitters. You've seen them write poetry, debug code, they can pass the bar exam. They just feel inevitable. Like they can do almost anything.
They definitely have that aura, don't they? That feeling of general competence.
They really do.
Yeah.
But then you give this super intelligence a Sudoku puzzle. Not even a trick one, just a standard hard-level puzzle from a newspaper. And what happens?
It breaks. Completely falls apart.
It doesn't just break, it's like a total implosion. I want to start with a number that just stopped me in my tracks when I was prepping for this. We're talking a solve rate of 2%.
2%, which is, I mean, let's be honest, that's basically zero. It's a rounding error.
Exactly. This is what we're calling the logic wall. You have these gigantic models that can talk about philosophy, but they can't place a number 5 in a box without, tripping over their own feet.
It really just exposes that huge gap between sounding smart, being fluent in language, and actually being logical. They're not the same thing.
But, and this is why we're doing this deep dive today, there is a crack in that wall.
Yeah.
Because in the very same benchmark where these giants just failed spectacularly, a new, much smaller model, it's called Kona 1.0.
From Logical Intelligence, yeah.
It hit a 96.2% solve rate.
And, it didn't do it by being bigger. It didn't do it by reading the entire internet again. It did it by being built on a fundamentally different idea of how to think.
That is the mission for today. We are going to deconstruct why our favorite chatbots are secretly terrible at logic and how this new architecture, this thing called an energy-based model, flips the whole problem of AI reasoning on its head.
We're sort of seeing a shift, I think, from the AI as an author, the thing that writes, to the AI as an engineer, the thing that solves.
Okay, so let's start there. With the Goliath that fell over. Why does a model that can explain quantum physics fail at a Sunday puzzle? I mean, I've seen these things write really complex code. Why is a simple 9x9 grid its kryptonite?
It really comes down to the way they're wired. We call these LLMs autoregressive. It's a bit of a fancy word, but all it means is they generate things one piece at a time.
One word after another.
Exactly. Token by token. Usually left to right, top to bottom.
Like you're typing a sentence.
It's the perfect analogy. When you write a sentence, you don't really know for sure how it's going to end when you start it. You're predicting the most likely next word based on the ones you just wrote.
Right.
And for language, that's great. It creates flow. But a Sudoku grid is a totally different beast.
How so?
A Sudoku is what we call a constraint satisfaction problem, a CSB. That means everything is connected to everything else all at once. If you put a 9 in that top left corner, that single decision instantly bans a 9 from appearing anywhere else in that row, that column, and that 3x3 box.
Okay, so one move here locks up options way over there.
And that is the absolute nightmare for an autoregressive model. Because it's filling out the grid like it's writing a story left to right. It commits. It puts that 9 down on the first step and says, yep, statistically, a 9 looks good right here.
It writes it in pen.
It writes it in permanent marker. Then it just keeps going. 50 tokens later, it's working on the bottom right of the puzzle and suddenly realizes, oh, uh-oh. The only number that can go here is a 9, but I already used it way back at the beginning.
But wait, can't it just go back?
Yeah.
I feel like I see ChatGPT thinking sometimes. It pauses, it rephrases. Can't it just hit backspace?
And that's the tragic part. No, it can't. Not really. Once a token is generated, it becomes a permanent part of the context history. It's set in stone for that generation. So what does it do when it hits that contradiction?
Lies.
It hallucinates. It just forces some number in there to keep the sequence going, even if it violates the fundamental rules of the game. And you saw the part in the research notes about the reasoning traces, right?
Oh, this was both hilarious and a little terrifying. The models write out whole paragraphs explaining their logic.
Exactly. The LLM will literally output text that says, okay, I am now analyzing row 4. The numbers present are 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, and 9. Therefore, the only missing number is 7. It sounds perfectly logical.
But then it puts a 5 in the box.
Precisely. It's mimicking the style of logic, not performing the act of logic. It spent 30, 40 seconds and thousands of tokens generating this beautiful explanation for a completely wrong answer.
So it's like, imagine trying to solve a crossword, but you have to do it by writing in pen, one letter at a time, and you're not allowed to look at the whole grid. You can only see the one square you're working on.
That is the perfect analogy, and that is why they fail 98% of the time. They are guessing a path forward without ever seeing the map.
Okay, so that's the autoregressive trap. Now let's talk about Kona. The docs call it an energy-based model, an EBM. And I have to admit, when I first saw energy in a tech paper, my mind went to, battery life or data center cooling.
Yeah.
But this is more like physics, right?
We're borrowing a concept from physics, yes, but you're right to separate it. In this context, don't think of energy as electricity. Think of it as tension, or maybe dissonance, conflict.
Tension. I like that. Okay.
So an EBM is built around this core idea of an energy function. You'll see it written as E, theta, of x. It's basically a mathematical formula that takes the entire state of the puzzle, the whole grid, all at once, and assigns it a single score. A single number.
So it's grading the solution.
It's grading it, yeah, but the scale is kind of upside down. In this world, a low energy score is good. A low energy score means harmony, compatibility. It means all the rules are being followed.
And high energy.
High energy is conflict. It's broken rules. If you have two 5s in the same row, that creates heat in the system. That's a high energy state. The model can feel that tension.
I see. So the goal isn't to predict the next number, like an LLM. The goal is to just find a configuration of the grid where the tension is zero, where everything is calm.
Precisely. And that is a huge mental shift. We are moving from a model of generation, what comes next, to a model of verification. How correct is this whole picture?
It feels, I don't know, almost more biological, like my brain feels better when an idea clicks into place. Confusion feels like high energy.
That's a great way to think about it. Mathematically, there's a specific relationship. The probability of any given state being the correct one is proportional to the negative exponential of its energy. The formula is P of x is proportional to e to the power of negative e of x.
Okay, let's unpack that math a little. Negative exponential. What does that mean in simple terms?
It just means there's a very, very steep penalty for being wrong. As the amount of error goes up even a little, the probability of that state being the true answer just crashes towards zero incredibly fast. So the model has this powerful incentive to find the absolute lowest point in the landscape.
So the goal is to get the energy down. I get that. But how does Kona actually do it? If it's not guessing numbers one by one, how does it fill in the grid?
This is where it gets really interesting. We said Kona is non-autoregressive. It sees the whole puzzle as a single object. But here's the really wild part. It doesn't solve it using discrete numbers like 1, 2, or 3, at least not at first.
Wait, what? It's a Sudoku puzzle. It has to use numbers.
It does at the very end, but while it's thinking, it operates in something called a continuous latent space.
Okay, you can't just drop continuous latent space on us like that. Break that down.
Right, sorry, heavy jargon. Think of it like this. A light switch is either on or off. That's discrete, one or the other.
Okay.
Now think of a dimmer switch. You can slide it smoothly. It can be 10% on, or 52% on, or 99.9% on. It can be anywhere in between. That's continuous.
So in this latent space, the model doesn't have to decide this box is a 5.
Exactly. It can say, this box feels like it's about 80% of the 5, but it's also got a little bit of 6ness and maybe a tiny hint of 4ness. It can hold all those possibilities at once.
You can be in between the numbers.
You can live in the gray areas. And because you can do that, the model can use gradients.
Gradients, like a slope on a hill.
Precisely like a slope on a hill. Imagine the perfect solution to the puzzle is at the bottom of a deep valley. The model starts by just dropping a ball somewhere randomly on the mountainside. That's its initial noisy guess.
Right.
Because the space is continuous, because it's a smooth hillside, not a set of stairs, the ball can feel the slope of the ground right where it is. It knows which direction is down.
So it can feel that if it nudges a number in this square a tiny bit more towards a 7, the overall tension, the energy, drops a little.
Yes. It performs what's called gradient descent. It looks at all 81 squares at the same time and nudges every single value a tiny bit in the direction that lowers the total energy of the whole system. Then does it again and again, hundreds of times a second.
It's literally sliding down the hill.
It's sliding down the energy landscape. This whole process is called inference as optimization. It's not guessing. It's refining. It starts with total noise and iteratively polishes it until it crystallizes into the one correct answer at the bottom.
That sounds, intuitively it sounds like it should be slower. Calculating the slope for 81 dimensions at once.
You would think so, wouldn't you? But because it's just following the math, it's not exploring all these dead-end paths like the LLM is. It's just heading straight downhill. And the results are staggering. Kona solves these hard puzzles in an average of 313 milliseconds.
300 milliseconds. And the LLMs were taking what?
The ones that finished it all were taking up to 90 seconds.
Wow. So Kona is sliding to the bottom of the valley in the blink of an eye, while the LLM is off writing a novel about why it's lost in the woods.
And that speed, that efficiency, brings us to the economics of this, because this is where that logic wall becomes a very expensive brick wall.
The source material had a cost breakdown for this benchmark. I honestly had to read the numbers twice.
It is pretty shocking.
So to run this test on about 13,000 puzzles, Kona's GPU time cost roughly $4.
$4, the price of a coffee.
And the big frontier LLMs, the ones that failed 98% of the time?
$11,000.
$11,000. That is an astonishingly painful price tag for a wrong answer.
But when you think about it, it makes sense. With an LLM, you are paying for every single token it generates. All of those long reasoning traces, all the, let me check column 3, oh wait, maybe I should look at row 7. You pay for all of that wasted thought.
It's like paying a consultant by the hour, and they just ramble for a week and then give you the wrong advice at the end.
Exactly. Whereas Kona only computes what's necessary to find the solution. But we need to zoom out, because I know some listeners might be thinking, okay, cool, but I don't run a Sudoku solving business. Why does this matter to me?
Right. Sudoku is just the test case, the lab rat.
It's a proxy for this entire massive class of problems called constraint satisfaction problems. Think about designing a computer chip, VLSI placement.
How does that connect?
Well, you have a piece of silicon, maybe billions of transistors. They all need to be connected by wires. They generate heat. They have timing requirements. You have all these rules. This component can't be too close to that one. This wire cannot cross that other wire.
It's just a gigantic three-dimensional Sudoku with billions of dollars on the line.
That's exactly what it is. And in chip design or in supply chain logistics or scheduling for a factory, fluency is worthless. You don't need the AI to write a beautiful poem about the factory floor. You need the schedule to actually work. If an LLM gets it mostly right, but hallucinates one tiny connection on a chip,
The whole chip is a brick.
it's a multi-million-dollar brick. You need 100% validity. This is why the EBM approach is so important. It's a path toward automating the parts of our economy where rules are absolute and correctness is everything.
I want to dig a bit deeper into the mechanics here. The papers mention this idea of compositionality. That's a big word. What does it mean in this context?
It's a really elegant idea. It's basically asking, how does the model handle lots of different rules at the same time? In Sudoku, any given number has to be unique in its row, and unique in its column, and unique in its 3x3 box. 3 different rules all applying at once.
Right, and adding more rules usually makes a problem exponentially harder.
For a search-based model, yes. But for an EBM, it's shockingly simple. Remember how energy is just a number that represents conflict?
Yeah.
If you want the model to satisfy the row rule, A and D, the column rule, you just add their energy scores together.
Add them.
Simple addition. The total energy is the energy from the rows, plus the energy from the columns, plus the energy from the boxes. So when the model slides downhill to find the lowest total energy, it is mathematically forced to find the single point where all 3 of those constraints are satisfied.
The bottom of the valley is the one place where all the rules overlap.
It happens naturally just from the geometry of the problem.
That makes a lot of sense. But what about training it? It sounds much harder than just feeding a model a bunch of text and telling it to predict the next word.
It is a bit trickier. The technique they use is often called contrastive divergence.
Okay, unpack that one for us.
The goal is to terraform that energy landscape we talked about. So you show the model a real, correctly solved puzzle, and you tell it, this is a good state, this is truth. And the model effectively pushes down on the landscape at that point, creating a little valley.
Okay, so you're digging a hole where the right answer should be.
Right. But if you only ever dig holes, the whole landscape would just sink forever. You also have to create mountains. You have to push up.
Push up on what? The wrong answers.
Exactly. The model tries to generate its own solution, and it gets it wrong. That's called a negative sample. The training algorithm then says, nope, that state is garbage. Push the energy up right there. Build a mountain.
So you're digging valleys for the truth and building mountains for the lies.
That's the core idea. And to make sure the model can find its way out of bad spots, they use one more trick called Langevin dynamics, or more specifically, SGLD.
Stochastic gradient Langevin dynamics. That's a mouthful.
It is, but the concept is really intuitive. We talked about the model sliding down the hill. Well, what happens if the marble gets stuck in a little divot on the way down? A spot that's low, but isn't the lowest point.
A local minimum. A fake solution that looks pretty good up close.
A comfortable mistake, exactly. Langevin dynamics is like gently shaking the board. It adds a tiny bit of random noise, a little bit of turbulence into the process.
Why add noise? I thought we wanted a clean answer.
Because that little bit of shaking is enough to pop the marble out of those shallow, fake valleys so it can keep rolling until it finds the one true global solution at the very bottom. It prevents the model from getting stuck on a good enough answer.
It's like shaking a box of cereal to make sure the prize settles all the way to the bottom.
Physics to the rescue.
So let's pull back. We have Kona, this EBM, just crushing GPT-5. Does this mean the era of the LLM is over? Are we just throwing away our chatbots?
Not at all. And this is a really crucial point from the logical intelligence team. The vision here isn't replacement. It's about partnership. It's a compound architecture.
The reasoning stack.
Exactly. Think about what LLMs are absolutely amazing at, the interface. They speak human language. You can give an LLM a messy, natural language request like, I need a schedule for my delivery trucks that accounts for rush hour and driver breaks, and it can translate that into a set of formal mathematical constraints.
So it sets up the problem. It's the front end.
It's the universal translator, but then it hands those clean, structured constraints over to the EBM, the engineer, to do the heavy lifting of actually solving the logic puzzle.
And this sounds a lot like what Jan LeCun has been talking about at Meta with his JEPA architecture.
It's very much in the same spirit. JEPA joint embedding predictive architectures and Kona are both moving away from trying to predict the messy, high-dimensional surface world of pixels or words. They operate in that abstract, continuous latent space we talked about. It feels like the whole field is waking up to the idea that next token prediction was maybe just a stepping stone.
There was one last concept in the notes that I thought was a real game changer. The blog post called it actionable guidance.
Yes. For me, this is the so what for anyone trying to build real, reliable systems.
Because right now, when an LLM fails at a logic problem, what do you actually get back?
You get a polite apology. Or worse, a confident hallucination. It has no idea why it failed. It got lost in the probability stream. It can't look at its own work and critique it.
But an EBM is different.
Because the EBM is constantly calculating energy for the entire grid, even a partially completed or broken one, it can give you a heat map of the problem. It can come back and say, hey, I couldn't find a perfect solution, but just so you know, all the energy, all the conflict is concentrated in this top right corner.
That's incredible. If you're a logistics manager, you don't want the AI to just say error.
Yeah.
You want it to say the plan is impossible because you have a bottleneck at the Chicago distribution center between 2 and 4 p.m.
Exactly right. It turns a generic system failure message into, here is the specific part that is broken. And that's the difference between a cool demo and an industrial tool. It gives you something you can actually fix.
It really feels like AI is growing up. We spent the last, 5 or 10 years mastering System 1, making AI fast, intuitive, fluent.
Gut reaction system.
And now we're finally starting to build System 2, the slow, deliberate, verifiable, logical part of the brain.
The poet is finally meeting the engineer.
And when those two finally learn to collaborate seamlessly, that's when things are going to get really, really interesting.
Absolutely.
If you do want to see the math for yourself, and fair warning, it is pretty dense. We put a link to the Kona white paper right in the show notes. It's worth a look, even if it's just to see the energy landscapes.
Yes, I'm going to check it out.
That's our time for this deep dive. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.